We're sitting today in the only Tralee and Dingle coach still in existence in Ireland. I found these many years ago in Cavan in County Kennedy, and a man called Jerry Welch had bought them as site huts in Ennis, and he didn't need the bogies, that's the wheels underneath. So he jacked them up, took the bogies out and put an axle under the middle of the carriage and towed them home to Cavan behind his tractor. And he was a land drainage contractor, so he used the carriages as site huts. And many years later, I was going from Dungarvan to Limerick in my truck, and there was two girls thumbing outside Clonmel, thumbing for a lift. And I gave them a lift to Limerick, and I started talking trains to them. And they said, "That's nothing, we've trams in our back garden." And my ears picked up, and I found out where they lived. And then my next journey to Dublin from Dungarvan, I went through Cavan, so I called in and I found two Tralee and Dingle carriages, a Wolverhampton trolley bus and a Dublin tram, and a whole heap of 2-foot gauge equipment. And Jerry Welch and myself got to know each other, and through barter and a few other things I got the carriages and the 2-foot gauge equipment. And this is many years later. That's nearly over 30 years ago. And we have now got the Camp and Annascaul Railway here in Drummond, and the Tralee and Dingle coaches ran here on the Cavan and Leitrim section of CIE and GSR. And in the end they were all broken up, but we have brought back a few, and I found two in Cavan and two in Bordnamona, and this one here is 10T. This carriage was built by the Bristol Carriage and Wagon company, and we still have the original maker's plate off the carriage. And the carriage was sold to the Tralee and Dingle Railway, which ran between Tralee and Dingle from 1889. Some of the carriages were built in 1889 to 1925, when the GSR took over the railway, and they ran it until 1939, and they closed to passengers, but it kept going under CIE to 1953 as a monthly cattle specialist to Dingle. And in 1953 everything was destroyed and gone, but some of the engines came here to the Cavan and Leitrim section of CIE, and they worked here till 1959, and one was repatriated, or one was sent to America and repatriated in the 1980s and restored in Tralee, where it is today in pieces. Now, in the last week, a few of us got together and we all took holidays from work, and we spent it in Drummond getting out all the pieces of 7T. And underneath 7T there was a 48C was on top, and underneath was the original Tralee and Dingle bogies, and we've taken them out and we're starting to clean them down, and we'll send them away for restoration. And in the bottom shed was the third bogie, which we found in Bordnamona many years ago inside two LMS NCC wagons, and that was down in the workshop for the last 20 years. And the other night we pulled it out, so all three bogies are together for the first time in years and years and years. What we're going to do is we're going to send the bogies away for restoration and the carriage, and build a complete new carriage on top of the chassis that we have. The chassis will be original, but the tops will be new, because the coach has been over 130 years old. They are not in good condition. Even the one I'm sitting in today would never be able to run as a carriage. It could be a museum piece, all right, but not to carry people. The carriage was laid out with the seats opposite each other, and you sat facing each other, and most carriages you get in and you either sat facing back or facing forward, but these ones, and you brought your own cushion with you, or a bale of straw to sit on. There was no upholstery, so you can imagine the run between Tralee and Dingle, how up over the mountains, how rough it was, especially in the middle of winter. And the people brought their chickens and their pigs and everything in with them in the carriage, so there was no there was no restrictions whatsoever. They carried what they wanted. When you look at the outside of this coach, you can see bars on the windows. It's like a prison, and the reason the bars are there is someone stuck their head out. They got their head taken off, so afterwards they put bars on the windows to stop the people putting their heads out the windows. And we have on this carriage here, they're still on the windows, and we have for 7T, we still have the bars for 7T as well. But we will make history the day that we get one of these restored. And we have the thing called the vintage Cavan and Leitrim Vintage Train Appeal, and that's to restore another engine that we've got called Drummond. And Drummond is a Kerr Stewart locomotive built in Stoke-on-Trent in 1916, and it worked for Balfour Beatty in Loch Arbor in Scotland, and then it was transferred to British Aluminium, who owned the plant on the same site. And in 1970 it was sold for £70 scrap value and ended up in the Hampshire Narrow Gauge Society, who stripped it of parts. And the pieces passed to Alan Keefe, where we found them. And it took us 8 years and £40,000 to restore the engine. Now, the engine did 10 years here, and after 10 years you must take an engine apart and rebuild it again, do boiler work and all to it. So that Drummond is away in England at the minute, and the work has started to restore Drummond again for running.